Kale Draven had never imagined Exile would feel so empty. The moment the Council's judgment was read, he had known his life would change forever. Sentenced to Vyrexia, a desert planet on the outskirts of the galaxy, he had expected isolation. Yes, but he had not expected the crushing weight of silence. The shuttle's engines hummed as it descended through thick, red dust clouds, and Kale pressed his forehead against the window, watching the barren landscape stretch endlessly below him. Jagged rock formations jutted like ancient teeth from the sands, and the horizon shimmered with heat, making the world appear almost liquid. The shuttle landed with a harsh jolt. The ramp extended, revealing the planet in all its desolate glory. Kale stepped out, feeling the rough sand crunch under his boots. The wind whipped around him, carrying the sharp tang of metal and stone. There were no welcome parties, no official reception, only the lonely howl of the desert wind. He had no choice but to make this hostile place his home. At first, Kale tried to establish some order. Using his engineering skills, he scouted the area for a suitable shelter. He found a small cave nestled between two rocky outcrops. It was not much, but it would protect him from the violent sandstorms that could arise without warning. He spent the first few days scavenging metal scraps from old, abandoned mining equipment that dotted the landscape. Kale built basic tools, repaired his water filters, and patched together a rudimentary solar generator. The work kept his mind occupied, but it could not fill the gnawing emptiness he felt inside. The nights were the worst. Vyrexia's twin moons cast cold, silver light over the desert, and Kale often lay awake, staring at the sky. Memories of his family, his friends, and even the Council's chambers haunted him. He had thought himself a man capable of enduring anything, but the truth was, he missed human connection more than he had ever admitted to himself. It was on the 5th day of his exile that he noticed something unusual. While exploring a canyon a few kilometers from his cave, he spotted the wreckage of a small shuttle partially buried in the sand. Its hull was scorched, and smoke still rose lazily from a cracked engine. Curiosity overcame caution. Kale approached, careful not to trigger any remaining defense systems. The shuttle's door was ajar, swinging slightly in the wind. Inside, the cabin was dark, but Kale could make out a figure slumped against the control panel. "Hello?" he called softly, unsure if anyone or anything was alive. The figure stirred. Kale's heart skipped a beat as he realized it was a person, a young woman in a sleek uniform, her features delicate and pale under the dust and dim light. She coughed, groaning as she tried to sit up, her hand pressing against a wound on her side. Kale instinctively went forward. "Wait. Don't move too much," he said, scanning her injuries. I can help you." The woman looked up at him with wide, wary eyes. There was a spark of intelligence there, sharp and alert despite the exhaustion. Kale noticed the insignia on her chest, a golden crest with a rising sun emblem. "Princess Lyra," he murmured under his breath. Somehow, he had recognized her. Stories of her daring leadership and strategic mind were common even in council circles. And now, here she was, stranded and vulnerable. Lyra's gaze shifted, studying him carefully. She did not speak immediately. Her lips pressed together, and Kale could see both suspicion and defiance in her eyes. She was not someone who could be intimidated easily, and that was a part of what made her legendary. I can take you somewhere safe," Kale said, trying to sound calm, even as his pulse raced. "You need water, shelter, maybe medical attention." She hesitated, then nodded slightly, as if weighing her options. Kale could feel her mind working, calculating. It was almost unnerving. With great care, Kale helped her out of the shuttle and toward his cave. Every step was cautious, as though both of them were testing the other. When they reached the entrance, he gestured toward the small space he had fortified. "This will have to do for now," he said. "It's not much, but it will keep you out of the storm." Lyra glanced around, assessing the cave. "It is secure," she finally said, her voice quiet but firm. "I will take what I can get." Over the next few hours, Kale tended to her injuries as best as he could. Using his limited medical supplies, he cleaned her wounds and applied bandages. Lyra remained composed, offering minimal words but a steady presence. Despite the dire circumstances, Kale felt a strange sense of relief. He was no longer completely alone. As the twin moons rose higher, casting their pale light into the cave, they settled into a quiet routine. Kale rationed water and food, sharing what he had scavenged. Lyra, despite her exhaustion, began to explore the cave, examining his makeshift tools and equipment. She asked questions, careful, precise questions about the machinery, the generators, and even the layout of the surrounding desert. Kale was surprised at her knowledge. It was clear she was not just royalty in title. She was capable, intelligent, and resourceful. "You survived the crash remarkably well," Kale said finally, breaking the silence. Lyra's eyes met his. "I am trained for emergencies, but I did not anticipate this planet." Kale chuckled softly. "Neither did I. I thought Exile would be boring. But it seems boredom is a luxury I no longer have." They shared a small, tentative smile, an acknowledgement that their isolation had forged an unusual bond. Neither of them spoke much after that, but the silence no longer felt oppressive. For the first time in days, Kale felt a flicker of hope. The next morning brought new challenges. A sandstorm approached, visible as a massive wave of red moving across the horizon. Kyle and Lyra worked quickly to reinforce the cave's entrance and seal any gaps. Lyra proved invaluable, moving with precision and calm under pressure. Kale watched her, impressed by her skill and determination. He realized that, despite being a captive, she was far from helpless. When the storm hit, the cave shook with the force of the wind. Sand seeped through small cracks, but they were safe from the worst of it. They huddled together, sharing warmth and quiet conversation. Lyra spoke sparingly, but her words revealed a sharp mind and a resilient spirit. Kale found himself opening up as well, telling her about his exile, his work as an engineer, and the mistakes that had led him here. "You are not weak, Kale," Lyra said softly. "Exile does not define you. Survival does." Her words struck him more than he expected. He realized that in capturing her, or rather, in choosing to protect her, he had found purpose. He was no longer merely surviving. He was responsible for another life. And in that responsibility, he found a sense of meaning he had not felt for years. By the end of the storm, the desert outside had transformed. The sands had shifted, revealing new rock formations and buried wreckage. Kale and Lyra ventured outside cautiously, taking stock of the changed landscape. They discovered supplies from other crashed shuttles and remnants of alien machinery partially buried in the sand. The discovery hinted at possibilities, technology that could help them survive longer. And maybe, one day, escape. For the first time since his exile began, Kale felt a spark of excitement. The planet was harsh, lonely, and dangerous, but it was also full of secrets. And now, with Lyra by his side, he no longer faced it alone. Together, they could explore, survive, and perhaps even thrive in this unforgiving world. As night fell again, Kale sat near the cave entrance, watching the twin moons rise. Lyra was beside him, her gaze fixed on the horizon. They did not speak. Words were not necessary. The presence of another human being, someone who challenged him and inspired him, was enough. Kale realized that exile had changed him. He had come to Vyrexia, expecting punishment and isolation. Instead, he had found companionship, purpose, and a new beginning. And although the future was uncertain, he knew one thing for sure. He would not face it alone. The desert wind howled around them, but inside the cave, warmth and light persisted. In the heart of exile, two unlikely companions had found each other, and with that, a reason to endure. The desert sun rose like a molten fire over Vyrexia, casting long, sharp shadows across the jagged rock formations. Kale and Lyra had spent the night talking quietly, their words measured, cautious. But each conversation built a fragile trust. The sand was still warm beneath their feet as they stepped out of the cave, ready to explore further. Kale had learned early that staying in one place too long on Vyrexia was dangerous. The storms could shift without warning, and scavengers, both human and machine, sometimes roamed the barren plains. "Do you know anything about this planet?" Lyra asked, scanning the horizon with sharp, observant eyes. Her uniform was still dusty and torn, but her posture was steady, commanding. "Not much," Kale admitted. "I know the basics. This planet was used as a mining outpost decades ago. Most of the equipment was abandoned when the Council decided it wasn't worth the resources. And, well, that's about it." Lyra frowned slightly. "Then we will need to be careful. Supplies will be limited, and water even more so. I am trained in survival, but I am not omniscient." Kale smiled. "Neither am I. But two heads are better than one." They moved cautiously through the rocky canyons, following the faint trails left by ancient vehicles and the occasional signs of animal life. Kale had prepared rudimentary maps, marking the cave and the shuttle wreck, but beyond that, everything was unknown. Lyra seemed particularly interested in these signs, stopping frequently to examine claw marks in the sand or broken machinery. Hours passed in quiet observation. Lyra asked questions about the machinery, about Kale's life before exile, about the council that had sent him here. Kale answered as honestly as he could, and he found that talking to her eased the loneliness that had gnawed at him since his arrival. By midday, the heat became unbearable. The twin suns beat down relentlessly, and the air shimmered with heat waves. Kale found a small alcove in the canyon wall and led Lyra inside for shade. They drank from their limited water supply and shared what rations they had scavenged from abandoned equipment. Kyle noticed that Lyra was remarkably efficient with resources, rationing every drop and crumb with precision. "This planet is cruel," Kale said finally, wiping sweat from his brow. "But it's not impossible. Just relentless." Lyra's expression softened, though her eyes remained alert. "I have faced challenges before. This is merely another obstacle. We adapt or perish. That is all." After their brief rest, they resumed their exploration, moving cautiously toward the site Kale had marked as a possible source of supplies. An abandoned research facility hidden in the canyon walls. The entrance was partially buried under sand, but remnants of alien machinery peeked out, strange shapes glinting under the sun. Kale's curiosity piqued. If he could access whatever technology lay inside, it might give them an advantage, perhaps even a chance to signal for help or escape. Lyra moved beside him, scanning the area. "I suggest caution," she said. "We do not know what is operational, or what else may inhabit this place." Kale nodded. "Agreed, but it's worth the risk." Together, they cleared the sand from the entrance and slipped inside. The interior was cool and dimly lit, a stark contrast to the blistering heat outside. The facility was old, abandoned decades ago, but its structure remained intact. Kale ran his hands over panels of strange metal, noting symbols and designs unlike anything he had seen. Lyra examined the equipment carefully. Some of this technology is advanced, perhaps decades ahead of Council systems. It could be useful, if we learn to operate it. Kale's mind raced. The potential of the alien technology was enormous, but he knew it would take time to understand. Still, even basic functionality could help them survive, improve shelter, or defend themselves. "We'll start with small things," he said. "Power sources, communication systems, maybe environmental controls." Step by step, they spent hours exploring the facility, moving cautiously from room to room. Kale found a storage area filled with supplies, rations, water filters, and tools that could be repurposed. Lyra helped organize and catalog everything. Together, they created a small base inside the old facility, combining Kale's engineering skills with Lyra's strategic planning. As evening approached, Kale noticed Lyra standing near the entrance, staring at the desert horizon. Her expression was thoughtful, distant. "What are you thinking?" he asked. She turned to him. I am thinking about my kingdom, Kale. About the council that sent you here. They will not stop searching for me. And if they find us, we will not survive without preparation. Kale nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Then we prepare, we survive, and if the council comes, we'll be ready. Their first night in the facility was tense but productive. They reinforced the entrances, secured their supplies, and began to experiment with the alien technology. Lyra's keen understanding of patterns and logic complemented Kale's technical expertise perfectly. Slowly, they brought parts of the facility online. A generator hummed to life, and a small scanner illuminated the surrounding terrain, giving them an advantage over the unpredictable desert. The following days were filled with work and discovery. Kale and Lyra explored more of the desert, mapping new areas and locating potential hazards, sinkholes, aggressive creatures, and remnants of rogue mining drones left behind by the council. They learned to move silently, to read the signs of the environment, and to anticipate dangers. Each challenge strengthened their bond. They shared stories, laughed when minor accidents occurred, and sometimes argued over strategy. Yet even arguments were productive, pushing them to think creatively and learn from each other. One afternoon, while scanning the horizon from a rocky outcrop, Kale noticed a movement far off in the distance, a small group of humanoid figures moving deliberately across the sands. His heart raced. Someone's coming, he said quietly. Could be the council. Could be scavengers. Lyra's eyes narrowed. Then we need to be ready. We cannot let them catch us unprepared. They returned to the facility, working quickly to reinforce defenses. Using parts of the alien technology, Kale set up basic traps and alerts around the perimeter. Lyra coordinated their movements and organized their resources. By nightfall, they had a small but effective system to detect intruders and protect themselves. As they settled down to rest, Kale realized how much his perspective had changed. Before meeting Lyra, he had been focused on survival alone. Now, survival meant protecting another life, coordinating strategy, and thinking beyond himself. He understood that human ingenuity was amplified when combined with trust and collaboration. This was more than survival, it was adaptation. A fundamental strength that set them apart from their enemies. The next morning brought both discovery and danger. While scouting a canyon near the facility, Kale and Lyra stumbled upon the remains of an alien drone, partially buried in the sand. Its sensors were still active, flickering intermittently. Lyra studied the device with fascination. This is advanced reconnaissance technology. If we can understand its systems, we could monitor a wide area around the facility without being seen. Kale agreed. Together, they carefully dismantled and studied the drone, learning its patterns and integrating its sensors into their own setup. The device gave them a significant advantage, extending their awareness across miles of desert terrain. They now had the ability to anticipate threats, giving them confidence in their isolation. Even as they worked, the looming presence of the council remained. Kale and Lyra were aware that sooner or later, forces would come searching for her. But for now, in the vast silence of Vyrexia, they had carved out a small sanctuary, a place of safety, discovery, and growing trust. That evening, as the twin moons rose over the desert, Kale and Lyra stood outside the facility, surveying their surroundings. We are not safe forever, Lyra said softly, but we are stronger than we were yesterday. Kale smiled, feeling a rare sense of satisfaction. Stronger and not alone. That's what matters. In the heart of the desert, amidst alien ruins and unforgiving terrain, two humans had found a way to survive. They had begun to understand the power of cooperation, ingenuity, and resilience. And though the future was uncertain, Kale felt a deep, unwavering determination. Together, they would face whatever Vyrexia and the council could throw at them. The wind howled through the canyons, carrying the promise of challenges yet to come. But inside the old research facility, light and warmth persisted. Kale and Lyra were no longer merely exiles, they were a team, a force forged in isolation and adversity. And with every obstacle they overcame, they grew closer, stronger, and more capable of facing the universe beyond the desert. The desert wind had settled into an uneasy calm. The twin suns of Vyrexia hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the jagged rocks and endless sands. Kael and Lyra stood at the entrance of the alien facility, scanning the horizon through the upgraded sensors they had salvaged from the drone. The flickering displays revealed a distant shimmer, something moving against the waves of heat. "They're coming," Lyra said, her voice calm but sharp. "Council forces. I can feel it. They won't stop until they find me." Kael's jaw tightened. "We've prepared as much as we can. The sensors, the traps, will be ready." Lyra nodded. But there was no mistaking the tension in her eyes. She was not only a princess, but also a strategist. Every movement, every calculation, mattered. Kael had learned to trust her instincts, and right now, they told him danger was approaching fast. The rest of the day passed in a blur of preparation. Kael reinforced the facility's entrances, double-checking the makeshift barricades and the alien tech modifications they had installed. Lyra oversaw the organization of supplies and rationing, ensuring that every item had a purpose. They moved with quiet efficiency, knowing that any misstep could be disastrous. By evening, the Council's scouts had arrived. Kael spotted them on the horizon. Sleek, black hovercraft glinting under the dying suns, moving methodically toward the facility. The ships were uncrewed, automated, designed to track and capture intruders with precision. Kael and Lyra had seen similar technology before, but never deployed in such numbers. "They're not sending just one or two," Lyra observed. "They want to ensure we have no chance." Kael's mind raced. "Then we need to create a distraction. Something to slow them down before they reach the canyon." Together, they devised a plan. Using the alien technology they had studied for days, Kael rigged a series of holographic projectors along the canyon walls. When activated, the projectors would create illusions of movement and structures, confusing the automated patrols. Lyra coordinated with him, setting timing sequences and escape paths. Every detail mattered. If the Council's drones identified even one inconsistency, the plan would fail. Night fell quickly, bringing with it a chill that cut through their layers. The desert's twin moons cast cold light over the sands. Kael and Lyra moved to their posts, hidden in the rocky outcrops surrounding the facility. Through the sensors, they watched the Council's forces advance, their mechanical precision almost hypnotic. At Lyra's signal, Kael activated the holograms. The desert flickered with phantom structures, shadows shifting and moving, as though the canyon was alive. Drones paused, recalibrated, and then advanced cautiously. The illusion worked better than expected. The patrols slowed, giving Kael and Lyra precious time to implement the next stage of their plan. They had prepared the environment for ambush. Using scavenged explosives and the facility's alien tech, they set traps along the narrow paths of the canyon. Sand pits, energy snares, and automated launchers would create chaos when the Council forces reached them. Kael and Lyra knew they could not defeat the fleet outright. They were outnumbered and outgunned, but they could delay them, using ingenuity to level the odds. As the first drones approached, the traps activated. Sand shifted violently, snares snapped, and holograms flickered to create sudden illusions of walls and moving figures. The drones, programmed to respond to perceived threats, faltered and collided. Sparks flew, metal clashed against metal, and the desert echoed with mechanical chaos. Kael and Lyra watched from above, their hearts pounding with tension and exhilaration. Lyra whispered, "This is only the beginning. We need to keep them disoriented until they retreat, or until we can escape." Kael nodded. He activated a second layer of defense. Automated turrets salvaged from the facility, modified to fire non-lethal energy pulses that disabled drone circuitry. One by one, the drones fell, creating a clearing path through the canyon. They were making progress, but the main fleet was still on its way. Hours passed in a tense battle of strategy and patience. Kael and Lyra moved through the shadows, sabotaging machinery and redirecting drones into traps. Every success built their confidence, but exhaustion weighed heavily on both of them. The desert was unforgiving. And even with their ingenuity, they knew they could not sustain this indefinitely. Finally, the leading ships of the Council fleet appeared over the horizon. Sleek, massive vessels glinted in the moonlight, their sensors scanning for any sign of the princess. Kale and Lyra retreated deeper into the canyon, using hidden paths and holographic decoys to avoid detection. They were now not just defending themselves, they were leading the Council into a carefully orchestrated maze of confusion and delay. At one narrow pass, Kale and Lyra made a critical decision. They would lure the fleet into a canyon choke point, where the terrain worked in their favor. The walls were high, the paths narrow, and any miscalculation could trap the Council forces. Using the remaining holograms and a series of energy pulses, they herded the ships into position. Then, in a coordinated move, Kale activated a series of devices that caused controlled collapses along the canyon walls. Rocks tumbled, sand surged, and drones were caught in the cascading debris. The Council fleet struggled to maneuver, and Kale and Lyra had successfully turned the environment itself into a weapon. For a moment, they allowed themselves a brief respite. Lyra smiled. A rare moment of lightness in the grim desert. "We are not out of danger yet," she said. "But this shows what we can do together." Kale felt a surge of pride. Yes. Human ingenuity. We may not have numbers, but we have strategy, creativity, and adaptability. That is our advantage. The night continued with tense monitoring. Using the drone sensors and alien technology, Kale and Lyra tracked the Council forces as they attempted to regroup. They realized the fleet would not retreat easily, but their defenses had bought valuable time. It was a reminder that intelligence, coordination, and persistence could rival even superior technology. As dawn approached, the desert grew quieter. The immediate threat had passed, but the Council would return. Kale and Lyra knew this was only the first encounter in a much larger conflict. They spent the morning repairing the facility, maintaining their traps, and reviewing their strategies. Every system had to be ready for the inevitable next attack. During a quiet moment, Lyra approached Kale. "You have changed since I arrived," she said softly. "You have grown from a man simply surviving to someone who thinks ahead, who protects more than himself." Kale looked at her, feeling the weight of her words. "And you have taught me that even in exile, or in the harshest environments, people can rise above circumstances. We can shape our destiny if we think creatively and work together." Lyra nodded, a rare smile playing at her lips. "Then let us continue. We must adapt, survive, and prepare for what comes next. The Council is relentless, but we are resilient." Over the next few days, Kale and Lyra expanded their base of operations. They explored more of the canyon network, uncovering additional supplies and small energy sources left by the original inhabitants of the facility. They integrated alien technology into their defense systems, creating automated monitoring stations and energy barriers that could buy them even more time in future encounters. Their bond deepened with each passing day. They shared stories of their pasts, of mistakes and triumphs, of dreams and fears. They argued over tactics and equipment, but even arguments strengthened their understanding of each other. In the heart of a harsh and lonely desert, they had found companionship, trust, and mutual respect. Then, one evening, while reviewing the sensor data, Lyra froze. "Kale, something is moving fast. Not drones, not humans." Kale leaned over the display. On the edge of the canyon, a new type of vessel was approaching, sleek, unfamiliar, and clearly not of Council design. Its energy signature was powerful, almost overwhelming. "Alien?" Kale whispered, a mix of awe and concern in his voice. Lyra's eyes narrowed. "Perhaps. But whatever it is, we need to be ready. This planet is revealing more than we expected." They quickly prepared for the unknown arrival, integrating it into their existing defense plans. The experience taught them a valuable lesson. Vyrexia was unpredictable, full of hidden challenges and opportunities. Adaptability, creativity, and courage were their greatest weapons. As the twin moons rose again over the desert, Kale and Lyra stood side by side, watching the horizon. They had survived their first major confrontation with the Council, and they had done so through ingenuity, teamwork, and human determination. The future was uncertain, the threats unending. But they had proven to themselves that even in the harshest environments, humans could rise, adapt, and prevail. In the vast, unforgiving desert of Vyrexia, two unlikely allies had not only survived, they had thrived. And though the Council would return, Kael and Lyra knew that together, they could face anything. The desert was quiet before dawn. But Kael knew calm was only temporary. The Council fleet would return, larger and more determined this time. Lyra stood beside him, scanning the horizon through the alien sensors they had integrated into their facility. Her expression was calm, but Kael could see the determination in her eyes. They had survived before through strategy and ingenuity, but now the stakes were higher. "We can't just wait for them," Kael said, adjusting the holographic displays. "They'll come at full force. We need a plan to strike before they overwhelm us." Lyra nodded. "We fight smart, not just hard. We use everything we've learned. The Canyon Network, the alien tech, and our traps. And we must be unpredictable. They expect strategy. We give them creativity." They spent the next few hours preparing. Kael reinforced the energy barriers, calibrated the drones, and tested the holographic projectors. Lyra mapped out escape routes and ambush points, considering every possible movement of the Council fleet. They worked in perfect coordination, moving seamlessly from one task to the next. Their minds aligned in focus and purpose. By midday, the fleet arrived. Massive ships descended from the sky, sleek and menacing. Hovercrafts moved ahead, scanning for any sign of the princess. Kael activated the first wave of defenses. Holographic illusions flickered across the canyon, creating phantom structures and moving shadows. Drones and patrol ships were drawn into the illusions, colliding and malfunctioning. "Good," Lyra said. "Now the next phase." Kael triggered energy pulses from the facility's perimeter. Sand shifted violently, and automated launchers sent harmless but disabling shocks at the Council drones. The fleet's advance slowed, confusion spreading among their ranks. Kael and Lyra watched from the canyon walls, hearts racing. This was more than survival, it was a demonstration of human ingenuity against overwhelming odds. As the battle unfolded, Kael noticed a section of the canyon that could serve as a trap. Narrow paths, high cliffs, and rock formations would funnel the Council's ships into a choke point. "We can lure them here," he whispered to Lyra. "It's risky, but it could give us the advantage we need." Lyra studied the terrain, nodding slowly. "We'll need to time it perfectly. One mistake, and we're trapped." Together, they orchestrated the maneuver. Using the holograms and the remaining drones, they guided the Council fleet toward the choke point. The ships, confused by the illusions, followed the projected paths. Once the majority of the fleet was in position, Kael activated a series of controlled rock collapses. Massive boulders tumbled, blocking escape routes and causing several ships to crash into the canyon walls. Sparks and smoke rose into the sky, and the remaining fleet struggled to maneuver in the narrow space. Kael and Lyra had created a battlefield where the environment itself became a weapon. Their preparation, strategy, and understanding of the terrain gave them an edge that raw firepower alone could not match. For the first time, they saw the Council fleet falter. "Keep going," Lyra urged. "We can push them back. They won't expect human creativity to outmatch their technology." Kael activated the alien drones, now fully integrated with their sensors. The drones targeted weak points in the Council's ships, sending energy pulses that disrupted navigation systems. The fleet began to retreat, some ships colliding with each other in confusion. The desert echoed with mechanical crashes and the hiss of energy discharges. For a moment, Kael allowed himself a breath. They had done it. They had defended the facility and delayed the Council's advance. But Lyra shook her head. "This is not over. They will return, stronger, We need a more permanent solution. Kale nodded, understanding the gravity of her words. Then we go on the offensive. If we can reach their main command ship, we can disrupt the fleet entirely. The plan was daring. Kale and Lyra would use the alien technology to pilot a small, retrofitted vessel capable of stealth. The vessel was nimble, designed for one-time, precise strikes. They would infiltrate the Council's main ship, disable its systems, and broadcast a signal revealing their ingenuity and human resilience. It was risky, but the potential payoff was enormous. As they prepared, Kale felt a sense of exhilaration he had not experienced since before his exile. Every challenge, every danger had honed their skills and strengthened their bond. Together, they were capable of feats neither could achieve alone. The vessel lifted silently from the canyon, moving low to the desert floor to avoid detection. Kale piloted, while Lyra monitored the fleet's movements and calculated the optimal path to the command ship. The Council fleet's sensors were sophisticated, but the desert terrain, combined with their alien tech, allowed them to remain undetected for most of the journey. Finally, they reached the command ship. Kale maneuvered the vessel through a narrow gap in the fleet's formation, dodging patrol drones and automated defenses. Lyra guided him with precision, her knowledge of strategy and technology complementing Kale's piloting skills perfectly. Once alongside the command ship, Kale and Lyra deployed the device they had engineered, a small but powerful energy pulse generator, capable of disabling critical systems temporarily. The pulse spread through the ship's circuits, causing alarms to blare and systems to fail. The fleet, now without its command guidance, became disorganized and vulnerable. Kale and Lyra used the chaos to escape, broadcasting a message across Council channels. Their voices echoed through the fleet, calm and confident, demonstrating their ingenuity and human resilience. This is Kale Draven and Princess Lyra of Arendor. You underestimate humanity. Creativity, courage, and collaboration are our greatest strengths. Retreat now, or face the consequences of your arrogance. The Council fleet hesitated, then retreated. Ships that had seemed invincible moments before now faltered. Confusion spreading among commanders. Kale and Lyra watched from a safe distance, feeling a surge of triumph. They had not only survived, they had demonstrated that human ingenuity could challenge even the most advanced forces. Returning to the facility, they were greeted by the quiet desert night. The twin moons reflected off the jagged rocks, casting silver light on the sands. Kale and Lyra stood together, surveying the results of their daring plan. The Council would undoubtedly regroup, but they had proven that even in exile and isolation, humans could rise, adapt, and triumph. Lyra turned to Kale, her expression serious but proud. We have shown them what it means to underestimate humanity. But more importantly, we have shown ourselves what we are capable of. Kale nodded, feeling a deep sense of fulfillment. And we have done it together. Exile brought us here. But our choices, courage, and creativity allowed us to survive and thrive. In the days that followed, Kale and Lyra strengthened the facility, integrated more alien technology, and continued to explore the desert. They discovered additional supplies, hidden tunnels, and even remnants of other exiles who had survived for decades using ingenuity and resilience. Each discovery reinforced the HFY truth. Humans could adapt, innovate, and turn adversity into opportunity. Their bond deepened, no longer defined by circumstance alone. They had become partners, friends, and equals united by experience, trust, and shared triumphs. Lyra began planning ways to unite exiles across the galaxy, inspired by Kale's courage and their combined victories. Kale, in turn, realized that his exile had transformed him from a man surviving alone into a leader capable of guiding others through impossible challenges. The Council, though defeated for now, remained a threat. But Kale and Lyra knew that with preparation, strategy, and their unbreakable resolve, they could face whatever came next. Viewership, once a place of isolation and despair, had become a crucible where human ingenuity and determination had forged a new beginning. One evening, as the sun set and the desert sky filled with stars, Kale and Lyra stood on a cliff overlooking their facility. The wind carried the scent of sand and distant metal, the quiet hum of their devices blending with the natural rhythm of the planet. Lyra smiled, a rare softness in her eyes. "We have come far, Kael. From exile and isolation to this. Together, we have turned despair into hope." Kael reached for her hand, a simple gesture of solidarity and shared strength. "And this is only the beginning. Humanity does not bow to circumstance. We rise, we adapt, and we endure." The desert stretched endlessly before them, full of hidden challenges, secrets, and possibilities. But for the first time, Kael felt truly free. They had survived exile, defeated overwhelming odds, and discovered the strength of collaboration and ingenuity. In the heart of Vyrexia, amidst alien technology and harsh sands, two humans had proven the HFY truth. Even in the most hostile environments, human courage, creativity, and unity could overcome any obstacle. As night settled over the desert, Kael and Lyra looked toward the stars. Their journey was far from over, but they had forged a path forward. Together, the council might return, new challenges might arise, but they knew one thing with certainty: humanity, in all its resilience and brilliance, would never be defeated. And in that moment, in the quiet glow of twin moons and alien machinery, hope burned brighter than any council weapon.